Welcome to Filmstrip and our American Ninja series.
Ninja? What the hell are ninja?
Featuring Ron.
Hey! We don't stop till one of us goes down. Now! Let's go!
And Jay.
Who is he? I don't know. He's a new recruit. I don't even know his name.
He possessed great skills.
These podcasts will be spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and details of the films.
And if a word of this gets out, I'll have you shot. You understand?
Welcome to Filmstrip. I'm Jay.
And I am Ron.
This is our review of American Ninja, starring Michael Dudikoff, Steve James, John Fujioka, and Judy Aronson, directed by Sam Furstenberg, released in 1985 on an estimated budget of $1 million. They spent $1 million on this. I want to know where it went. It grossed $10.4 million at the box office. Now, we're going to get into American Ninja, but first things first, Ron, welcome to Filmstrip and Continuous Play. Tell us, folks, a little bit about yourself and, kind of stuff you like and why we are reviewing the American Ninja series, because this is your idea.
Yes, no one to blame but me. Well, my name is Ron, obviously. I'm the American correspondent for denofgeek.com, which is the British pop culture nerd website. I'm the owner of popfi.com, which is where I basically write about weird stuff or things that entertain me personally, and I hope other people dig it. I've been working in a variety of movie review-based websites and a couple of podcasts and lots of failed projects since the late 90s. And I've always wanted to be on a podcast, so time to check off a thing on the old bucket list.
Also proof that if you will banter back and forth enough with me on Twitter, I will drag you onto a show. Because that's how Nick got on the show. That's ultimately how Kurt got on the show. and that's you. So I'd never be afraid to engage with myself or Brian on the social media. But now, we talked about, hey, let's do a podcast. And I said, okay, here's some stuff we're thinking about doing. Or if you got something else, bring it up. And you went to American Ninja. And I said, okay, I got to know why.
Oh, man. Well, my childhood consisted of watching a whole bunch of those garbage Golan Globus canon films, movies on television, your Chuck Norris's, your Michael Dudikoff's, your David Bradley's, your Sasha Mitchell's.
Yes.
And
dare we forget Sasha?
Well, no, I mean, he is the kickboxer.
Yeah, he is the kickboxer. This is true. So.
And one of the things that has stuck with me for probably 25 years is the idea of ninjas. Growing up in the 80s, there was just ninjas everywhere. And if a movie had ninjas in it, I was right there ready to watch it, from, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the Nintendo games like Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Warriors. And I've had this memory for a long time, and it took me forever to figure out where it was coming from. And it was this vivid image of a training montage of ninjas dressed in these primary color Crayola uniforms trying to kill some random white dude. And as it turns out, it's an American Ninja memory.
That sounds like the spec script that got this made. Random ninjas trying to kill some random white dude. So I will say this, and before we get into what I know about American Ninja, Golan Globus, I do know. It's hard not to be a fan of, especially 80s cinema, and not know canon films. And, folks, we have reviewed a canon film before in our Continuous Play lexicon. Brian and I did Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, which can totally be blamed on the fact that Life Force was a complete disaster, and there weren't enough Chuck Norris movies to fund the Superman movie. So that's what they came up with. But you're right. I mean, look, I was a fan of the Golan Globus lexicon too. Invasion USA. Maybe someday we'll come around to that one. It's been a long time since Rostov, It's Time to Die, but I remember that one vividly. And I think I've seen part of some of this before, but I'm honest. It's rare to find something I really have no connection to at all, and you did it. Because I was like, if I saw American Ninja, I blocked it from my memory. You talk about movies with ninjas, and the first thing that popped in my head to tell you the kind of stuff I watch, I'm like, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street 4? Because, the kid with the nunchucks and the karate. So,
Oh, that's right.
and
Yeah.
of course, Karate Kid. I think that's a lot to do with this. That and the Chuck Norris legacy. But, yeah, and if it weren't for the few Bruce Lee movies I've seen, which I'll say now, I've seen more biopics about the life and death of Bruce Lee than I've seen Bruce Lee movies, because I think there may have been more of those than he actually made.
Well, they only made like 4 or 5 movies. So
Yeah.
It's not hard to top
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So, I didn't know much about this, but Michael Dudikoff's a face that if you've seen it, you never forget it. And I think a lot of this is something that certainly struck memories in me. But yeah, we are definitely in the action ghetto. but that's not always a bad thing. That can be fun. I do recall some of those missing in action films being a lot of fun, even if they were a little ridiculous.
Yeah, a little ridiculous is a great way to describe this movie.
Yeah.
Or a lot of ridiculous.
Well, depending on how you want to look at it. But I guess before we get any further into it, Ron, since this is your grand idea, and as I tend to do this with new people, you bring up something on the show, cool. You get to summarize it. So please tell us what American Ninja is all about.
Okay, Private Joe Armstrong, as played by the legendary Michael Dudikoff, is a man with a mysterious past. He doesn't know where he's from, where he was born, and he's not even sure of his real name. He was found on an island, and after a bit of trouble with the law, he's enlisted in the U.S. Army to be shipped off to some anonymous country being played by the Philippines. Once there, he uncovers an arms smuggling arrangement in which the villainous Ortega steals shipments from the Army while Sergeant Ronaldo and Colonel Hitchcock look the other way. Ortega has a private army of dudes in pith helmets and a secret cadre of ninjas led by the evil Black Star Ninja, which I think is the only name he has. Mm-hmm. So it's up to Joe and the mysterious water gardener who trained him in the ways of the ninja to stop Ortega, break up the arms smuggling scheme, save Colonel Hitchcock's lovely daughter, Patricia, and along the way there are many, many, many ninja fights.
I think that's about as good as you could get. Yes, that's a good summary. Matter of fact, that's more coherent than half of what I think I saw. We're going to get into all of it. There's a lot here. Now, we should tell folks, too, should you want to view American Ninja, obviously we're going to be spoiler heavy, like we say in our credit sequence. So if you want to watch this before we go any further with it, you don't have to rent it. You don't have to buy it. Go to YouTube. Nobody's even claiming domain on it anymore, folks. They're all there. The whole 4-part series. So go enjoy yourself. Unless you get infatuated with what Wikipedia tells you, the 5th installment in this is not a real American Ninja film. We're not doing that one. It's just the 4. So if you want to watch this, you can watch it. And I will say now that is exactly how I consumed this, was through YouTube.
Oh, that's how I discovered what movie I was thinking about all those years. I was like, all right, let's look at some random movies. I've got nothing better to do. And I went to the subreddit Full Movies on YouTube, mm-hmm. which shout out to them. And somebody had posted it as a full movie on YouTube. And I was like, I got nothing better to do. I love 1985. Let's watch this thing. And magic happened. Yes.
1985, a seminal year for film. So many great things, American Ninja among them. So I think that's what we can say. But,
so many great mustaches.
Oh, and so little time. We'll get to Jackson's mustache. I got words about that, but and the Fred Williamson-esque way he tries to play that role. But yeah. But I was struck by something immediately when it started. Of course, the Canon logo, you can't miss that when you see it. But the music, and I actually wrote down in my notes, Ron, oh my, the Golden Globus films just had a sheen all their own when it came to the score. I don't know what you call it, but it only fits their movies. It's like the quintessential mix of the A-Team and like bad 80s techno.
Yeah, I said in my notes I described it as great fake A-Team music.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it is. It's the best you can get for $200 in a synthesizer in 1985.
I'm not convinced that one of the actors didn't just do this on the side. It was probably Michael Dudikoff. He's a man of many talents. This is true. Later on in this fall, we're going to be covering Halloween. I'll get to talk about John Carpenter's, scores and things like that. This is not quite on the same level, but it does have a ring to its own, and it introduces to this. And I love how we're just thrown right into this thing too. That's what kills me about this is we meet, Joe, and you called him Joe Armstrong. I'm like, did he get a last name? I missed that because I was sitting there the whole time going, this guy he's like the man with no name, but he's a karate dude instead of the gunfighting Westerner. And the first time we meet him, he's playing with a butterfly knife. Now, I've known a lot of people that have been in the military, even in the 80s, right? And none of them played with, only posers fooled around with butterfly knives.
Yeah, I remember that being a big thing as a child, the plastic butterfly knife.
Yeah.
Back when you could have toys that looked like real weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to learn how to do all those cool butterfly knife, flip it open and flip it back shut kind of things. And pinching my hand repeatedly.
Oh yes, many times. I even had the switchblade comb.
Oh yeah, it's classic.
And like every idiot, I tried to put a real blade in it. When it flung it out, I realized that was a different kind of weapon. So this is also the 80s, though, when you could go to the fair. Like I think South Park spoofed this, and you could actually buy like actual ninja, weapons and stab each other in the face with it. All the 80s were a different time, but.
I'm pretty sure that's where they got their ninja props later.
I wouldn't doubt that they won them on a couple of good fastballs. Maybe Dudikoff won them on the weekend break. But I mean, this is the whole. I mean, there's no setup at all. Like we're just thrown right in. You get this guy who's the loner, and they're going to make the shipment. They're going to drop the shipment. I'm like, okay, I don't know what the military's doing here, but that's fine. And then we get the random commandos who hijack the convoy.
Yeah, in the most blatant. You're going to be robbed setup I think I've ever seen.
Yes.
Like we're building this. They have this heavy construction equipment, and they're on what's basically like a dirt road almost. I'm not sure what they were supposed to have been doing there, but I mean, clearly the military bought it.
Well, yeah, isn't that part of the deal that we learn later on? The sergeant's in on all of this, and of course, so is the base commander too. So they're getting set up from the beginning, but we don't know that until 2/3 of the way through the film. So at this point, it just seems like really poor government planning, and it's like they got robbed on the way to Mr. Miyagi's in Karate Kid 2. I mean, that's what it looked like to me.
Oh yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's this random shooting, and I had this whole thought because I've just come off of Star Wars with Kurt, and we made a big deal about the stormtrooper lack of aim and things like that, and I said these guys are the prototypical of that because they can't hit anything. Now, granted, they're firing Uzis, which is a spray and pray weapon anyway, but they couldn't hit anything. I think they scared everybody to death when they shot anybody in this thing.
Well, that might have been the point. I think the deal was they weren't supposed to actually injure anyone, and then Joe just starts murdering people with car repair equipment.
Oh, yes, that's the thing. That's when you know immediately, like, if there was any question as to who the American ninja is, it's answered real fast. If it wasn't for the butterfly knife and the super gel hairdo, it's when he starts killing people with random farm equipment and, like, catching arrows with his hand and breaking them and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Oh, that was my favorite shot because he just breaks the arrow with such a derisive expression on his face. It's like, he's just kind of disgusted that they shot an arrow at him because clearly he's the American ninja and cannot be killed with conventional weapons.
Right. Well, and what's even funnier is that the other ninja is actually afraid of this. I'm like, you got more arrows. Keep coming. Let's test that theory. Let's see how good the average is. And the whole thing is they seem to be harassing this woman, Patricia, the dog, who I know as one of the many kills in Friday the 13th final chapter. And I think she's been in some other stuff too, but that voice, man. I was like, you're either that or you're the chick from Halloween 3. I don't know which one. When I looked her up, I was like, oh, you're that one. Okay. And so I was like, well, why do they want her? Like, nothing is explained. And that's the thing about action films. And I had to remind myself, I'm in the 80s. I'm in an 80s action film. They don't explain any of this. The entire walk and talk of the film is to explain it to me. So I had to remind myself, what kind of movie I was watching here.
Right. This is the 80s. It's Golan Globus. We spent all the budget on cocaine. This is just what we're gonna have.
Yeah, and squibs, because there's lots of those too. So they don't go off on anybody else. But yeah, I don't know. I love this, but here's the thing that got me, like when the ninjas got the sergeant up against the wall and he's like, "Who is that guy? He's got skills." I'm like, since when did ninjas talk? I thought that was the point. I was like, Snake Eyes doesn't talk. What's up with that?
I think Storm Shadow talks though.
Storm Shadow always talks, but that's because he's the bad ninja. So
Well,
maybe
that's what it is.
Yeah.
This is the bad. That would explain why Joe has like 10 lines in the whole movie, and they're all like monosyllables.
Well, I got another reason that Joe's got 10 lines in the whole movie, but we'll get there. So I don't think it's got anything to do with him being a ninja. But yeah, I love Black Star Ninja, and I think that is how he's credited in the film, which is funny to me. And we know that because he has a little black star, like jailhouse tattoo below his right eye. That's how they got him. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know who this actor is, knowing from nothing else, but if that's him really talking and they didn't dub that in, that's even more offensive. Like that guy it's every bad Asian American stereotype in film ever.
Yeah, he's pretty. Everybody in this movie sounds kind of weird, but he's one of the most spectacular ones.
Oh, by far, it's really strange, but it does get us into it. And I'll say this: the one thing about Golden Globus films, I always did like, they didn't waste any time getting to the shoot 'em up. Like it's right out of the gate. We're gonna blow stuff up. You don't know what's happening, and so they drop a line in there though, which is interesting for me. Is that it's the third time we've been hit, and I was like, nice security, guys. And the part of me is like, okay, no, wait a minute. I know it's the '80s, it's the Reagan '80s, where relatively peaceful. There's no wars really. There's little skirmishes here and there. It's not like today. I mean, it's hard to think about it in a post 9/11 world what the 80s was like, but having grown up in it, I remember this. And you would assume that that could probably happen because there were such lax problems in the military at the time. It was like a national story. So this may seem really off to people who watch it now, but it's not entirely too far from what could have actually gone down back then.
And I think this was during the whole, not too far after or during the whole Iran-Contra thing, where we were secretly selling arms to the Contras in Nicaragua.
Yes.
So as I was taking my notes, I just kept calling the Colonel Oliver North.
Honestly, I thought about Contra too in a part of this. But I think it's all part of the times. I'm sure when they were putting this together, Golan and Globus were like, yeah, we sell arms in the Middle East. It's all dirty politics, but man will have a change of heart. We have a pretty girl, American Ninja. I think that's probably the production meeting.
We made all that money with Enter the Ninja and Revenge of the Ninja. We got to spend it on something. Exactly. Let's just get more ninjas.
Let's just go back to ninjas. Don't we have some ninja costumes left? Yes, let's go back to ninjas. But I love how, though, Joe goes and rescues Patricia, and of course they're running through the jungle, and he stops to rip her skirt up, to turn it into shorts, and chop off her shoes, and I'm like, right out of Romancing the Stone. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Said in my notes, I described it as the meet cute begins when he breaks the heels off of her shoes and cuts open her skirt, and then it becomes Romancing the Stone with ninjas.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it feels like. That's exactly how it plays, but without the charisma, or acting ability or the cleverness.
Yeah, or the plot. There's none of that, but it is Romancing the Stone with ninjas. I'm sure that was part of the discussion, too. And you get the feeling that's what they told Judy Aronson to play it like, because she starts coming on to this dude, like, fast. Like, she's, washing her clothes off in the jungle rain or whatever, and I'm like, that escalated quickly. And she's going, ain't it funny how we're out here with no clothes on? I'm like, yes, that's quite funny. So,
well, can you blame her once she gets a look at those Dudikoff abs? It's what mortal could stand a chance against that?
No one. I dare say yes. The man is chiseled. Let's say that. I don't know how big a dude he really is. I imagine he's not very large, but he's ripped for what he's got. Like he's a ripped dude. We got to talk about him for a minute, okay? Because I teased it already. His acting, if we want to call it that, what would you say it's channeling? I'm like somewhere between Dead Eyes and a computer. It's sort of how he plays it.
Yeah, it was like I just oh man, that's a good one. I would say it was kind of Dead Eyes is a good description. he stood around with his mouth slightly open a lot, so he kind of looked like a confused animal. He had just wandered in onto this film set, and all of a sudden people were yelling at him to say words, and he just has that deer in the headlights, kind of helpless child expression.
There's that, and there's the "I'm too cool for the room" thing that he's got going on. Like he's one of the other T-Birds in Grease 2 or something. I mean, he's kind of got that hairstyle, and that seems to be how he walks around the set.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt. I also liked that he kind of sounded like Joe Pesci if you neutered Joe Pesci.
I hadn't thought about that.
In his delivery, it's just kind of, hey, it's kind of lackadaisical, but he's got this kind of higher pitched voice.
Hey, I'm a ninja.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of that, yeah. I don't know. It's really strange because he does his job. He saves the girl. He, defends against the ninja attack or whatever, and they're gonna court-martial him. Like, for what?
I would say it's a criminal lack of charisma. And there's absolutely no chemistry between him and Judy Aronson.
Oh no!
It's like she has more chemistry with Curtis, who we meet later in the movie, and who's also a much better actor and a much better martial artist.
I would agree. Steve James, Curtis Jackson, much better person. When he comes into the story, it's much cooler. He comes into the second act because that's what kind of gets me is this guy does his job. Like what he's supposed to do. He defends, he makes everybody's life better, and they all hate him. And I'm like, I get it. People died, but they're like, isn't that the idea? Like, they're like mad because he killed the enemy. I'm like, isn't that kind of what you're supposed to do if you're in the military? I mean, I know that's rather rudimentary of me to say and maybe a little redactive, but come on.
Well, I was thinking the whole time, they're really mad at this guy, but he didn't actually shoot any of those people.
Yeah, like, he just returned like a non-gunpowder based fire at them. He threw sharp implements of destruction at them all. So, like, at some point, some commanding officer should be like, hey, maybe this guy's, better than just a driver on the convoy.
Well, I mean, he did kill a guy with a screwdriver, and he possibly killed a guy with a four-way lug wrench.
Yes.
I couldn't tell if it killed him or just severely injured him, but it was a bad time for that guy.
Yeah, getting hit with that would not be a good day. That's for sure. That was a rough gig. But that's the thing. And I think the whole first act is to set this guy up as the loner hero that the outsider no one knows anything about. He just goes by Joe. And he's just that. My name is Joe. And I'm like, man, is it one letter? I mean, does he sign with an X? I mean, we don't know this guy, anything about him. And I love how we cut from him to the other totally autonomous villain with his own ninja camp. Ortega. Oh, right. I'm like, okay, I'm watching this. I'm going, yes, it's a South American type, drug lord type, Latino evil. That's what we're looking at here.
He's the poor man's Ricardo Montalban.
Yes.
with the white suit and the kind of puffy hair.
I had never thought Ricardo Montalban, but that brings Fantasy Island into a whole new context.
Yeah, the whole time I was thinking, it's like, well, this is obviously evil Fantasy Island, and his fantasy was to have a drug cart, arms, and ninjas.
Yeah, so like what we're getting is they're stealing. His gig is they steal military equipment, resell it on the black market, then turn around and put it into the drug empire, right? So it's like double level investing.
Yeah, I think so. It was some kind of he's selling the equipment, and maybe some of the money is going to the rebels. There's talk of rebels later on. I'm not sure who's rebelling against who.
I don't get a sense of one because they don't explain it. Like you said in the plot summary, it's a country played by the Philippines. We don't really know what San Sabald or whatever we're in here. Like if it's the same country that Schwarzenegger had to invade in Commando, or what it is. And I actually wrote down in my list, please ask Ron what Evil's plan is, because I'm not really sure. I'm 40 minutes into this and I don't really get it other than just make money. And I'm like, well, isn't that always Evil's plan?
I think that was it. I think they were like, well, this guy is going to sell arms to bad guys. I mean, this guy's clearly a bad guy because he's brought his own toady. And his goal is $4 million. He says it several times. Yeah. And that seems to be his only motivation.
I know, I'm like, $4 million, it's like a magic number for something.
Yeah, but you can't take care of all those ninjas with only $4 million. There are like hundreds of ninjas.
Not even in 1985. Not even in the strict world of ninjadom. I don't think you could get by with $4 million. I agree. I think that seemed like a number that they threw out there, but it wasn't real at all. Like I don't know. It was very strange that they kept dropping the $4 million. Like, it seems like somebody in the production house was like, you got to keep reminding people how much this is all worth, because that will seem like a lot of money, because 13-year-old boys are going to be the only people that watch this. And so that will sound like a lot of money to them. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but that's kind of what it sounds like. So we cut back to Joe, and now we of course, as with in every hero's journey in the 80s, right, you have to have one of their future friends be their enemy to begin with, right? And that's Joe versus Curtis Jackson.
Yeah, the much more charismatic, much friendlier. I would much rather watch a movie starring this guy, Curtis Jackson, who is unlike Joe, who is kind of like a blank slate, or not offensive, but brusque cool.
Yeah.
This is a dude that everybody seems to love. This guy.
Well, how could you not? He's cool. I mean, he's a cool African-American man. He talks cool. He's big. He's tall. He can do martial arts. And he talks trash. Because when he gets into a fight with Joe, he's like, look, come on, let me see what you got. No, we don't, Joe puts him down on the ground. He's like, hey, we don't quit till one of us is done. And I'm like, man, yeah. And you know what? I was like, well, that's right out of Officer and a Gentleman, Richard Gere and Lou Gossett Jr. Boy, that's a totally different dynamic this time around. But I'm like, man, is there not an 80s film these people haven't ripped off yet? It's only 85, and they've hit two big ones already, Romancing the Stone and Officer and a Gentleman.
Yeah, and they just don't stop.
Well, all we needed was a Joe Cocker. All we needed was a Joe Cocker song to tap that whole scene off, and it would have been perfect. But I love how they wrestle like in. It's supposed to be like outside of a barracks. That's about as much yard as I have out in front of my apartment. I don't know where these guys are stationed, but it's pretty sad. And you kind of get the feeling like they rolled up somewhere and said, look, everybody jump out. We're going to shoot here for an hour because it's broad. There's no lights. It's all broad daylight, and then they got ran off. You're like, what are you doing? But I do like the fight. I will say this. I know Michael Dudikoff is a martial artist and stuff like that, but he plays it so stiff. Steve James has a lot more grace in his movements, I thought. I actually dug him as a martial arts performer.
Yeah, he's like I said in the beginning, he's a much better cinema fighter. His movements are a lot smoother. Michael Dudikoff looks like he's mumbling his fight choreography in his head as he's doing it. Like, okay, high punch here, now low punch, block this guy, throw him over my shoulder. Mm-hmm. It looks like he was being fed his what he was supposed to do in the various fights, like through an earpiece, and there was like a half-second delay between when they told him what to do and when he started to do it. Oh
yeah, it seems so off-center the way these two guys fight, but the whole purpose of it again is the two good guys to act like enemies but earn respect trope. That's what they're supposed to do with each other. And then now they become like best buddies. Like they're walking around, they're hanging out. Jackson's telling him to go ahead and go after Patricia. Of course, that's always let's go after the boss's daughter, right? It's because she's not going to be attracted to anybody normal. She's going to go after the loner loser ninja of the group.
Right. I mean, he did save her from some random Filipino day laborers. It's pretty clear that that's instant love.
Of course, and the only thing it didn't have a good song. There was no good love music in this, and I guess that got cut in the budget. But they couldn't even get any fourth-rate '80s ballad band to come up with something. Like there wasn't like a Survivor knockoff group working at the time that could have done a tune for them. I don't know. I was looking for something a little bit more with that.
Well, they did have like a string flare and they did have some pianos, and I think there was even a saxophone. So that's kind of the height of what you can expect from the love theme of American Ninja.
True. Yeah, I don't think anybody's rushing out to buy the soundtrack to it or whatever.
You mean you don't have it on a big album?
I do not have the LP of this, and I don't think my older brother does either. But I'm going to ask him the next time I see him. So,
it came with my Laserdisc.
Of course. The expanded director's cut, of course. But I love how Joe is also a stunt bike rider once everything starts going down at the base too. And I actually wrote him. I said this thing has become like a live action Contra. You remember that video game, the side scroller?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is Contra. This is what this. It feels like Missing in Action, Contra all got together. Like they threw we have a ninja film, but everybody's got to pick up guns at some time and just start shooting stuff.
Oh right, and that ends up leading to one of our big. Is that the setup to one of the car chases?
Yes, one of the many car chases. Yeah, the vehicle stunt course, as I called it, the base becomes. So for some reason,
it's great how they leave those motorcycle friendly ramps right by the wall.
Oh, I know, and there's always like random gas cans to run into and blow stuff up with. So because those are just laying around, the military base where there's live ammunition going off every 5 seconds. So, but I love how the ninjas come in for the kill. And Joe takes every one of them out. I'm like, dude is a Jedi, and nobody knows it. Like he is at this point, he is taking out at least a dozen people, and all he gets in return is more threatening for a court martial.
Oh, of course. I did like how they kind of counterbalanced the fight with Joe and Curtis to the scene of Black Star Ninja and his people like showing off their skills.
Yes.
I described Black Star Ninja as Japanese Charles Bronson.
Ah, good call. Yeah.
Because he's got kind of that scowl face. And it's funny, in one of that fella's other roles, I looked him up on IMDb just a few minutes ago, and in a 1979 Kung Fu movie, or actually 1975, he plays a character named Bronson Lee in a movie called Bronson Lee Champion. And then there's a sequel, Ching Fa, where he's also Bronson Lee. So I'm not the only person who says that guy looks like Charles Bronson, and that makes me feel better.
I'm sure someone at Golden Globe has thought that too. That's probably why he's in the thing. It's certainly not for his acting ability, but now he by far is. I mean, he's the real thing. If that's really him performing the ninja moves, he's pretty good. I'll say that. I mean, it's what I expect when I think 80s ninja. The way that he goes around and the way his crew works.
Oh right, yeah. He's pretty phenomenal, and the Ninja Gardener later on is also pretty good, despite being 112 years old. Well,
we'll talk about Ninja Gardener in a second, because before that, we got to talk about how Joe learns about the ninja camp. He climbs onto the truck in Indiana Jones style, right? Or actually more like Robert De Niro in the remake of Cape Fear style. He rides on the underneath of the truck. The whole, what is it? 12 miles, 5 miles, 12 feet between the evil base and the army base.
I think they're just, it was just right next door.
Yeah, it was right across the bridge. Yeah.
Like a good 15-minute, pleasure drive.
Yeah.
Except you're hanging on to the underneath of a deuce and a half.
Which, of course, everyone can just do. Especially the Americans.
Oh yeah, that's what they're designed for. Yeah. They're designed for people to ride under them then leap out and surprise ninjas.
Right, there's so many places for you to hold on to. I mean, that's just what I just kept thinking. I was like, this is a government vehicle built on bid. There ain't nothing extra on that thing at all. There's not even cushions in the seats. All right, so I laughed at that, but again, I thought, well, okay, now that's another great '80s movie we're going to rip off. Raiders of the Lost Ark, sure, why not? Let's go ahead. We're doing it. Let's just go for it. So all I was waiting for was for the ninjas to come out with lightsabers at the end. Then the circle would have been complete. But I don't get that, so they didn't have the budget for that this time around. Maybe in part 4. I don't know how far it goes, but
they did have the ninja magic.
Yes.
Later on, so.
Yes. And okay, this is a good time to talk about the old gardener guy, the water gardener guy, because he introduces a lot of the mystical element of the film, I would say. I think you called him. He's connected to Joe, and I actually wrote down, I was like, let me guess. He trained him off the streets. Because they asked Joe, like, where'd you learn those moves? And he keeps saying the same thing, the streets. And I'm like, what, Sesame Street? What street is this dude from? So it's like, this is not a... I knew people that grew up, tough like that. They didn't look like this dude. They may have been as built. They may have been, just as strong. They didn't look like this guy. So you don't get to looking like that on the streets. And you don't learn that on the streets either.
Maybe it's the street that Bruce Lee was born on. I don't know.
The old gardener comes in, and I actually wrote down in my notes, this is the time when Yoda shows up to explain the plot to us. Because I just felt like that's who this guy was supposed to be.
Well, he's a little bald dude with some crazy facial hair. It's pretty appropriate.
Who is connected to the loner hero that we don't know much about, who has skills that we can't explain. So, I mean, tell me, I know the Lucas archetype is built from several things, but tell me that's not part of what's happening here.
Oh no, that's definitely what they were going for. I have no doubt he's the mysterious trainer of our hair gel Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, you've got him, you've got the magical Lando Calrissian friend. I mean, you've got the whole Star Wars motif going on here. And you've also got, and let's not forget, downplay this, the old Asian man who's going to help me, that's Mr. Miyagi.
Oh yeah.
At this point, I think there were 2 Karate Kid films, or at least there was one. There maybe the second one may have been a production, but everybody was crazy about that. And so, of course, we got to have the old Japanese man come in and explain everything, and to be connected, he's the guy that trained, hair gel Luke Skywalker, Joe, to be the killer warrior that he is. And that's ultimately what we'll learn, that they roll that out as slowly as possible. But I don't think it's not framed in a way that adds any suspense.
No, they don't do a good job of disguising it at all. Mm-mm. I mean, they pretty clearly, Ricardo Montalban Ortega just says, we found this guy, and I gave him a job because apparently he's a good gardener. And it's like, well, okay, you found a random Japanese guy in your whatever country this is supposed to be that's clearly not Japan. He's gonna come back and be something important later on. I mean, since he's not one of the ninjas, and Black Star Ninja doesn't acknowledge him as someone he knows, right, that you're pretty much, it's Joe or nobody.
Yeah, he's connected. Obviously, he's connected somewhere on the inside. We're just waiting to find out what. But Joe escapes, gets back, and gets thrown into another prison. Like, this seems to be like a thing that Joe goes from being either in hot water with the ninjas that want to kill him, back to the army that wants to court-martial him and throw him in prison. He just goes from one cell to the next.
Well, they're clearly angry that he saved that annoying daughter's life.
Well, that, and he's attracted to her, which, of course, the say anything trope, we can't have that. So the outsider, we cannot allow Bender to get with the rich girl. So in this case, there's your Breakfast Club reference. So I mean, that's what this is. It's because I mean, he gets up with Jackson and with Patricia, and they try to explain things to her dad, the colonel. And what does he do? I'll make a phone call and get right on this. And what do? They bring people over there to arrest him, and they blame all the thefts on him. And the sergeant is like loving this because he's like, now I have my alibi. Sweet. And I'm like, you didn't think about setting up a patsy beforehand? Oh, no wonder you're an idiot.
Yeah, he's clearly not. There's clearly no brains behind this operation at all. So he's definitely not thinking 2 moves ahead. He's a good move behind Joe and basically everyone else. He's the sergeant is only there to yell at people and to look nervous in his little costume.
Oh, well, it's because it's 2 sizes too small, and that's kind of the joke about him, is that it just doesn't fit. So
yeah,
so it's a strange occurrence to watch that little round man run around the screen, but I've seen stranger stuff. But the night attack on the prison. Here's the thing I had to ask, because Joe's going to have the fight coming from all corners at this point, and I'm like, what is he doing with his hands before he gets broken out of prison, breaks out of prison, and then goes into that big fight?
Oh, that is something the old gardener man taught him.
Okay.
It's some sort of Zen mind focusing technique to allow him to harness his ninja skills to their fullest potential.
Well, it works because, again, he gets out of what seems to be like impossible odds. And I love how we get like round one of him and the Black Star Ninja, that they get around to go at each other a little bit before we're going to get, because it's going to come down to those two at some point. Like, we can't have a satisfying film unless they square off against one another. And so they do give him a little round one before Joe ultimately, he gets away, and then that's actually when Joe confronts the Colonel at that point, and they try to arrest him again.
I liked that during the second one, the Sarge randomly becomes a standard movie villain.
Yes.
Instead of trying to pretend that he's not on the take, he shoves his like driver out of the Jeep, and then takes over the chase, and they're like shooting indiscriminately at Joe as he's trying to get away, heedless of every innocent bystander that may be living in the vicinity of this road.
Yes, there are rounds going off in every direction. I mean, look, the main ninja even gets Patricia. He hits her in the neck with some kind of poison. I'm like, what's that all about? The Colonel's on your side. Like, what's that going to prove? Now you're just going to make him mad. Like, he's just turning the blind eye. He's not maybe an active participant in this whole charade, but that's not a good idea.
No, you think you would want to not get your cover story mad at you.
Yeah, I mean, that's how your conspiracy unravels, people. So you got to get this stuff done right.
Yeah, don't stab one of your conspirators' daughter in the neck with a poison dart. That's always a bad idea.
Right. Of course, the Colonel changes his mind, but the thing is too late. Is it too late? We don't know. Joe, of course, tracks the compound down and gets past the gate with ease, and then that's when he comes into the old man, and it's time for Joe to, I wrote in quotes, remember. And I'm like, remember? Is he going to mind melt with him now too?
I think it's because they had some sort of hallucinogenic tea together.
That's what I wondered what that was, because again, I was going Karate Kid 2 when Miyagi and his woman, but really more Daniel-san and Kumiko were, right before the hurricane hit. So trying to have a love scene with Peter Cetera music going down. So all that was happening, but it was in flash forward because it's just Joe and the old man. And I realized something else too. I was like, there are some Morpheus Neo scenes from The Matrix that are directly aping this moment. And I'm like, well, I know that's a ripoff of a lot of kung fu stuff, but clearly that this wasn't lost on the Wachowskis either. So
you would hope not. I mean, clearly this is the spiritual father to The Matrix, but with the cutting edge special effects. Like when the Sarge's Jeep crashes and then it blows up like it was a truck full of napalm.
Yeah, I love the crash trope, and then it's it's ignited like a bomb, like you say. It's full of napalm, and so we get this huge gas explosion. But of course, the old man, of course, underneath his bunk has this cache of ninja weaponry that he's just sort of been holding on to, waiting for Joe to wake up. And like that's when I started going like, look, I know what kind of movie I'm in here, but you at least got to try to explain how this happens. How did he know Joe was there? Did he sneak in? Did he try to get transferred there? How did he know that someday Joe would come across from that army base and need him? I mean, how did he know any of this? Unless we're to believe that Joe grew up really right there in, unnamed country and just wound up stationed there.
I don't know. I think it's just an enormous coincidence that this all happened. Mm-hmm. Unless perhaps the old guy used his ninja magic to influence Joe's future and to get him to follow the path to end up in the fake Philippines.
Well, let's talk about the ninja magic, because you brought that up a little bit ago. What is with the ninja magic?
Well, clearly ninjas are magical. They, like the old guy can disappear in a puff of smoke and teleport, apparently. He can use his magical LSDT to reawaken Joe's memories of that training montage.
Yes.
He's got that magical chi hand expression that he does. His Ronnie James Dio ninja hand gesture. that helps Joe live up to his true potential as the American ninja.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently he can just materialize these weapons out of thin air.
Well, I mean, yeah, they just come out of nowhere, and I'm like, he's like the Ninja Q, for a James Bond movie. He's just got all the stuff, and I didn't expect him to say, "Now bring it all back in one piece." When Joe walks out, getting all of his ninja gear, and of course, Joe goes after all the other ninjas, and this is to the point when the army arrives. Like Jackson arrives, the other soldiers, and it's on. I'm like, now this is Contra.
Yeah, Jackson arrives like a Black Schwarzenegger, shirtless and pumped up, shooting a .50 caliber machine gun on the back of a Jeep, being driven by that wormy guy
Yes.
who's the comic relief friend, and who is mostly pointless. Then Jackson gets into a fist fight with that giant guy who apparently can't be punched in the face and hurt. Lots of stuff blows up. The Colonel, I think it's the Colonel who's like riding on top of a tank,
Yes.
shooting like a 9mm for no good reason. You're in a tank. Clearly, you could have more firepower at your disposal than that, and to ride on top of a tank defeats the purpose of He's not even on top of the tank. He's like laying on the front of the tank.
Yes.
Right where people are going to be shooting at him.
Yeah, I got problems with that for a minute. First off, if the Colonel even rides into battle with you, which he wouldn't be, but even if he did, he would be in the most secure spot to be in. He'd be inside of that tank. Let's say he was a tank commander. He would be inside of it. He would not be in the open air shooting his random Browning high power at people. That doesn't prove anything to anyone.
I mean, he was practically like doing ship's mast on the head of the tank, in the front of the tank, or like ghost riding the tank.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. And the Colonel ends up getting shot by Ortega. And I'm like, why does Ortega even hang around when it all starts going to hell there? Why does he I'm like, why stay and watch the fight? I guess he wanted to see Black Star Ninja and Joe, go at it finally.
Yeah, he says one of his flunkies is after his two money marks leave, one of his flunkies is like, let's get to the helicopter. He's like, no, we have to wait for the ninja, because apparently Black Star Ninja is the only ninja trainer outside of Japan, and
I guess so.
clearly the only ninja trainer that looks like Charles Bronson, and that's just something you can't let get away for no good reason.
This is true. And you know what? I said earlier, if the ninjas had lightsabers, my circle would be complete. Well, Black Star Ninja does have a laser that he uses. I'm like, what is happening now? Now we have really jumped into Looney Tune territory that I was not expecting us to go to. I thought it would just be this martial arts showdown. But it's really not. Like, there was more action in the Jackson Joe fight than there is in the Black Star Ninja Joe fight to me.
Yeah, and he's got that random little hand derringer, whatever it is, with the 5-shot little.
Yeah, that are all aimed in different directions. I'm like, that is an incredibly inaccurate weapon.
It's an incredibly pointless thing you just discharged.
Exactly. You fired 4 firecrackers off of your fingers. I hope your hand was well protected, stuntman, because that was pretty awful. But yeah, he's got all, and I think what we're supposed to get is that Joe is the true warrior because he doesn't resort to all that kind of crap. But in the end, he's still just using the same ninja stuff everybody else has got. He's got the katana sword and the throwing stars and all that stuff.
I will give them credit. They did use every possible ninja weapon that they had access to.
Yes.
I mean, you saw the katana, you saw the sai, you saw the
nunchucks.
The spears, you saw the bow and arrow, and it's some crazy ancient bow and arrow. It's not even like a modern recurve bow.
Yeah.
It's like a hand-carved bow made out of bamboo.
It's something that like the wildlings would have had in Game of Thrones. Like it's very much part of that whole lexicon of weaponry.
Oh yeah, very much so. And they even used some things as weapons that ninjas didn't use as weapons, like
Yeah.
their climbing, like the weighted chain that they would use to climb walls, or like the cat claws. They
Yes.
even used that. Somehow they figured out a way to use palm spikes as a weapon. It's horribly ineffective, but they still used it as a weapon.
They have that, and then of course don't forget the laser and the random gun for no reason at all.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But in the end, a couple of chops in the chones and it's over. And that's the end of the Black Star Ninja, of course. And then I love how Joe, of course, jumps on the helicopter to grab Patricia in like this, I don't know, Die Hard 3-esque move to get, or True Lies, really more like it. Grab her out of the helicopter while Jackson shoots the bazooka at the helicopter and blows the model helicopter to smithereens.
I was thinking more along the lines. I was thinking cliffhanger.
Ah.
But I could be wrong.
I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but all I remember in that movie is John Lithgow telling Stallone he's a piece of work, and Stallone telling him he's a piece of something else. And that's the only film. That's the only thing I remember out of that old movie. That and the chick from Northern Exposure was in it. But another podcast for another day, perhaps. But no, I love how they get away. Jackson blows up the helicopter, and now that's it. Like there's no go back to the base. There's no Joe and Patricia hook up, get married. Nothing. It just ends on the theme song, and we just zoom out with the helicopter shot away from the base because that is a Golden Globus trademark to end at the action scene. We don't need to explain anything else. We just blew everything up.
Who needs any resolution to the plot? I mean, who needs a plot?
Yeah.
We had ninjas and we had some explosives and we had a government that's very lenient towards allowing us to blow up small chunks of their territory.
Exactly. So, we wasted our budget on Tannerite, and we get this shot of Joe's eyes at the end with this look of resolve on his face, as if to say, like, I wanted him to just use the line, "I am the American Ninja." and there could have been like an 80s rock song, like American Ninja. We couldn't get one of those. That would have been awesome. But
they had to spend all that money to build an actual working handheld laser.
This is true. And it served no purpose other than to cut down part of the gutters. But that's where it leaves us. And my question is, well, what about this screamed, let's make a franchise? So, because I'm sitting there wondering, like, I know there's 3 more of these. I'm like, how are they going to pick up from any of this? Because I know the only person coming back besides Dudikoff is James. And I'm like, well, how are we just going to put him in different places? Because I knew nothing about the sequels, until going into it. So I was curious where it was going to go from here. So they leave us in such a, I don't know, just a thud ending.
And then everyone goes to jail for international arms dealing.
Exactly, yeah. I know people in the military, you have to explain every round you fire. So how are you going to explain the fact that your base 1 has been turned into Excite Bike with bombs and blown to bits, and then you took out this random, local thug for seemingly no reason?
You murdered hundreds of local people wearing safari outfits and carrying Uzis.
Yes, and you need to explain yourself at some point. But maybe they will in the sequels. We'll have to see. Well, Ron, I think we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for American Ninja?
Honestly, since I picked the movie, I would definitely say it's worth seeing. There's some good action scenes. There's a lot of terrible 80s cheese that I found really funny. The soundtrack is, of course, should have been a diamond record. It's that good. And everyone should see where the legend of Michael Dudikoff begins in the jungles of the Philippines, beating up extras in ski masks.
All right, so what's your popcorn rating?
I think I would go with a medium popcorn. It's not that bad.
You know what? I walked into this thinking this whole series is going to be small popcorns. It's just a matter, are they like burnt or are they any good? And I'm going to say this first one is actually a medium popcorn. It is the very definition of your standard 80s schlock action, ghetto action movie. Like it really is. And if for nothing more than just the unintentional humor of all of it. And how you can laugh at it now and how bad the acting is and all of that stuff. I find this film utterly hilarious to watch. And I would say it is probably a lot better to watch with a group of folks. I think this could be a good bad movie night. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Just, get a couple of cans of high explosives, and everybody just hang out.
Yeah, I mean, you just need like a vat of like Monster, energy drink, and your favorite set of peanuts, and you got a whole weekend, and you don't even have to pay for it. Hook your Kindle up to the TV and just flip on YouTube, and there it is. So I'm gonna go medium popcorn though, because knowing what I was going in for, it was actually a lot better than what I expected. I had a lot of fun with it. It's not great, but it's for 80s action fare of its kind, it's actually okay. It wasn't that bad, but I have absolutely no I couldn't have lower expectations going forward for the series, especially knowing that they're all subtitled. Like, that to me is always like, well, that's when you get a bad sign, because you're already trying to tell me the plot doesn't explain anything, so we got to make it in the title for you. So I'm curious to see where we get with parts 2 through 4.
That seems like a pretty fair assessment, but they did increase the budget for part 2. I mean, there's a lot more explosions to be had.
So we'll get to that on the next show. Folks, thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com. Click on the link for movies, and you can find all the past series that we've done, and keep up with this one. You can also find links to our Facebook and Twitter pages, and link to the iTunes feed, so you can subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review there. On the Continuous Play page, you can find links to the Fabish Factor, the general film discussion podcast, and television discussion podcast hosted by Kurt Fabish and several others. They're talking about Game of Thrones. They talk about The Wire. They talk about top films of 1989, all that kind of stuff there. And then, of course, the link to The Art of Slaying, the 7 seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer retrospective that Brian and I have done recently. And Ron, tell folks how they can follow your writing on the internet.
You can find me at popfi.com. I post there usually once a day, sometimes twice a day. It'll just be random stuff that I find amusing or weird. denofgeek.com, and that's about it.
All right. Well, folks, till next time, from Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for joining us.
Remember the day I found you.
All content used or discussed in this podcast is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
I must therefore ask you to accompany me to the police station to answer several serious questions.